The Whispering Mountain by Joan Aiken, Chapter 9. By now, Hwaffa's fire was burning briskly. "Do not try to stir yourself yet, sir," Owen said to the hurt man. "In a moment you shall have some warm wine." Making certain that this was the correct treatment, he pulled out his little book and consulted it, to the admiration of Luggins and Mogg, neither of whom could read. "Treatment for wounds. Shock. Hysteria. Administer a little warm stimulant. Lay the patient in a recumbent position. Hot fomentations applied to the affected part. Allow small quantities of gruel. The patient should be kept cheerful, spoken to kindly yet firmly, and told to stop any eccentricities. If necessary, administer a teaspoonful of sal volatile and dash cold water in the face." "Hoot, Moeen!" protested the patient, struggling to sit up. "What gars ye ca? Me eccentric? I'm nae mair eccentric than only everybody, but I shouldna say nay to a wee drappy of yon warm stimulant." A little wine had now been heated in the silver cuplet of the stranger's wine flask. This was administered. Meanwhile, Doc and Hwaffa, under Owen's direction, pounded up a handful of chestnuts in some more of the wine, and cooked the mixture into a kind of porridge. "I'm afraid it's all we can do in the way of gruel, sir," Owen apologized, but when a spoonful of it was offered to the hurt man, he smacked his lips and declared it to be the best clot of parritch that he had tasted since coming south of the Roman wall. When it was all swallowed, they tried to apply fomentations of hot wine to the stranger's wound, but at the very attempt he let out such a yell of indignation that they were obliged to desist. "Deil racks, ye thrappies, lads! Are ye clean daft? Ne'er put good Bordeaux to sic a villainous ploy as yon. Na. It will gang mair glegly inside than out." He then took the cup from Owen and drained it, muttering to himself in an undertone, "But there, what can be expected from a ween pock-puddling Welsh caterans?" Owen was puzzled. He had begun to suspect that the wounded man might be the missing Prince of Wales, particularly when Dove, giving him a nudge, pointed out a crown and feathers engraved on the stranger's silver wine flask, cup, spoon, and hunting knife. But why should the Prince of Wales wear a kilt and speak with a Scots accent? This riddle was presently solved, however. The chestnut porridge did their patient so much good that he was able to sit up, declaring in a stronger tone than he had yet used that he was muckle obleeged to them, and that they were as gleg and handy as a set of lads as a hunter could hope to meet. He then tried to stand, but found this beyond his power. His wounded leg had stiffened, and he was unable to set it to the ground. "Ech, oin, neighbours, sair as I mislike to trouble ye mair, I believe I'm obliged to ask if you will be so good as to convey me to the nearest town. Dooms me to think that Davy, Jamie, Charlie, Niddy, Geordie, Harry, Dick, Tudor Stewart should land himself in sic a fascist visionless pass." "Oh, sir!" Owen exclaimed. "Then you are His Highness the Prince of Wales." The other boys gaped in surprise at this, for they had not heard Mr. Smith's proclamation, having been outside the museum at the time, and so had no notion that the prince was in the neighbourhood. "Och, aye, sir, I'm Wales, but nae to case to muck. A plisky-plasky about it," as they began awkwardly bowing and tugging at their forelocks. "In the forest, ye ken, we're a' friends together." And well, the boys were collecting fallen boughs and weaving them into a rude litter to carry the prince. He entertained them in the most natural, cordial, sociable manner, with tales about his childhood in the castle of Balmoral, and the hunting he had enjoyed in the Scottish forests. "But good save us," he concluded, "our Scots boars are douce and meek as lambs compared with yon flightsome Welsh tuskers. 3 of the Hallions set on me like bulls of Bashan this morn in the tempest, and I had muckle ado to dispatch them. Ah, thank ye, my lads. I'm fair beyond to, I'm fair beholden to ye, as they assisted him onto the stretcher, though it fashes me to take ye out of your road. The flood had now diminished so that it was possible to wade across from the island, and the boys set off southwards through the forest, four taking turns as the stretcher-bearers, while one rested and kept a lookout. The weather was much colder now. A keen wind whistled through the trees, almost stripped of leaves by the storm. To keep the hurt man warm, they covered him with dry moss scraped from the undersides of rocks. Owen privately was somewhat disappointed by the commonplace appearance of the prince, a slight, active-looking man in his early 30s, with a long nose, reddish hair, and a weather-beaten complexion due to his insatiable passion for hunting. However, his sparkling dark grey eyes and air of command made the boys treat Prince David with instinctive respect, though he continued to chat to them as cheerfully as they bore him along. Presently Owen decided that the prince seemed recovered enough to hear some intelligence of a distressing nature, and so broke it to him that his father, King James III, was ill and calling for him. To their astonishment, the prince burst out laughing. "Ha ha ha ha! A wheel, he said at length. It's ill to mak mock o' the pure old gentleman, doubtless. I maun humour him, and gang back to London. Ilka path has its puddle, but I'll wager a guinea that nae mair than lonesomeness ails him. He's aye of a shilpit, and dow-spirited humour when I'm awa hunting." Owen then ventured to ask the prince if he had yet received the letter dictated by Bilkin Prigman and addressed to him demanding money for the stolen harp, but the prince had not. He had been alone, he said, hunting in the forest for the past 5 days, and no doubt a large bundle of mail was waiting for him at Caermallen, whither it had been his intention to proceed. "Oh, sir, then please, when you receive the letter, tear it up and take no notice of it. Indeed, I was forced to write it, but I did not steal the harp of Teatu, and do not want money for it. All I want is for it to be restored to the Pennygaff Museum." "Hoot, money! What's all this him-dirham about a harp? Ne'er speer at me, sae lying nibbit, but tell me a round wi' tale about it, frae the beginning." Thus encouraged, Owen once more told the whole story of the harp, and the other members of the party also added their comments and amplifications to the tale as they carried the prince along. He listened with the greatest interest. "Whisht, whisht, did ye ever hear sic a pickle prin?" he commented. "And so, who do ye jealous has yon harp the new then?" Owen did not quite like to voice his suspicions of Lord Malin. Prince David was presumably a friend of his, and he had been proposing to stay at Caermallen, but the other boys were more outspoken. "No danger there, sir. It's the Marquis himself. Promised to pull down the town of Pennygaff stone by stone, he did, and let the forest grow out of it, if he did not get his hands on our harp. Black shame it is," Mogg said earnestly. "Rubbish! All wrong ye have it, boy," contradicted Luggins. "Not his lordship, but the foreign gentleman wants the harp, so I was hearing." "There's a fool you are. It was the Marquis, look you, without a doubt," answered Whaffa. "Nonsense, then. It was the foreign gentleman, indeed," cried Dove. "Humph!" said Prince David. "Whichever ane of them it was, it's plain that those 'twas supple scoundrels Bilkin Prigman man be snacket into jail. Ance they are tied up in iron garters, they'll soon enough betray the worry villain who hired them to make off with yon harp. The first bough we reach, I'll in command the justices to carry out a search for them. Where are ye bound, lads?" The boys had agreed, hastily discussing the matter, that since he was obliged to return to London, it would be folly to carry the prince all the way to Caermallen. They had therefore turned aside in the direction of Nat Agardau, which, Mogg reckoned, would not be more than 10 or 11 miles south of them. Here the prince could obtain treatment for his wound, and would be able to hire post-horses and a carriage from Mr. Thomas at the Boar's Head for his journey home. Owen chafed somewhat at this interruption to his errand, but he admitted to himself that the prince's conveniences must come first. Also, there might be a chance to see Erebus again, and, another consideration, with the Prince of Wales prepared to help him, surely his own fortunes must now take a more favourable turn. They had left the gorge and were making their way through a level stretch of forest, checking their course by means of Owen's compass. In order not to jolt the hurt man too painfully, they were obliged to go at a fairly slow pace. After an hour or so, the prince announced that he was faint with hunger. At this time, Hwapha, armed with the crossbow, was going ahead as lookout. Not long afterward, he was lucky enough to shoot a hare, which they cut up and toasted on sticks over a hastily kindled fire. The prince, nibbling a leg of hare, washed down with the last of the wine, declared that Hwapha was a bonny shot, and, given a little practice, would make as brisk a hunter as any lad north of the Highland line. Having eaten, his highness soon became drowsy, and Owen, a little anxious about him, urged the others to make as much haste as possible. The day had become even colder, and the sky was thickening and darkening. A recurrence of the storm seemed probable. They went on fast and silently, saving their breath for walking, since the track they had taken now began to climb the lower slopes of Fig Hat Ben. "Snow it do look like," said Mogg after an hour or so, squinting up at the murky clouds overhead. Sure enough, in an hour or so, a scurry of white flakes began to blow past them, borne on the north wind that whistled fiercely at their backs. Dove, who had been taking his turn as lookout, came back to the main party and beckoned Owen aside during a pause when they were getting their breath at the top of a steep ascent. "Hey, Owen boy," he whispered, "what did those two crew to do look like? Those two that took the old harp?" "Bilk and Prigman. I hadn't my glasses on for most of the time I was with them, but one was short and stout and sandy-haired, and the other was tall and dark with a flat face. Why?" "What's it, you?" Dove said. "If you will come this way, I will show you two men, the very spit image of that, sheltering under a rock." Owen's heart beat fast. He followed Dove, who led him cautiously round a rocky outcrop, grown over with young firs, which gave fairly good cover. They had moved on again. "They have moved on again," Dove muttered. "There they are, see, Owen, climbing the slope." Owen peered through the snow, rubbing his glasses, and saw two figures, one short and stocky, the other tall, going up the hill. Could they be Bilk and Prigman? It was hard to decide. In the poor light, the two men stopped and seemed to dispute, shaking their fists at one another, then went on again. "I do think it might be them," Owen said, frowning with the effort to see through the flutter of snow. "Indeed, I am almost certain, but I can hardly leave the prince to follow them." "See what the others have to say, is it?" suggested Dove. "Going the same way as us anyway, those two seem to be." So they returned to the stretcher party, who were busy adding another layer of moss to the prince's covering. "Not too good, not too good, the old prince, I am thinking," Hwapha said. "Brick red his face is, and breath coming very quick. Best we get him to shelter fast, eh, boys?" "Wait, you," Dove said. "We have seen those two thieves, Bilk and Prigman, climbing the hill yonder. First, give them a taste of their own medicine, is it?" Hopeful grins spread over the faces of Luggins and Mogg, who dearly loved a fight, but Hwapha shook his head. "Best not to waste time," he said. And Owen, who had been looking at the prince, entirely agreed with him. And we will pause there.